What's good, everybody? It's your boy Tico on Blitz, back at it again with another video. And today we are going to be talking about the Tier 9 American Premium Heavy, the MBTB. Possibly considered to be one of the most balanced autoloaders that was recently introduced alongside the BZ176 from the Bluffin F1.0 event, to where you had to open up crates and gain currency from them in order to receive this vehicle as a part from it. Now the vehicle is being introduced in crates, to where it's kind of what Wargaming kind of does on a frequent basis, is their normal 5% drop chance, and then you would have to spend 65,000 gold to open 30 crates and gain 30 charms to get the vehicle for guarantee. It's kind of their way of utilizing their catfishers in terms of wasting life savings in order to gain access towards new vehicles. I would possibly not recommend to get that. However, the MBTB is possibly considerably a fairly deadly beast, and the reason why is because it's mainly known for having armor, a fairly solid gun that carries 2 shells in its auto reloading clip, and it has fairly solid maneuverability and very solid hold down capabilities, surpassing 8 degrees of gun depression, which means that it can be quite flexible when poking over ridge lines. And in terms of the physical stats, the vehicle has 260 on the front of its turret and 160 on the front of its hull. And in terms of what the armor profile looks like against possibly one of its belated enemies, the Yad Tiger, this is what it would look like. There's some troll spots that will occur on the majority of the vehicle, but the main concern is the turret, especially when you hit it in the wrong spot. You are almost guaranteed to bounce it in many aspects, having upwards of 266 to about 272 space, and just a lot of very troll positions in the upper 300s alongside that. When I load in my premiums is where it's all going to change. A Yad Tiger can 100% butter through some parts of the turret and the majority of the upper plate. However, there's like 2 little cheeks on the side skirts of the upper plate to where they can be sincerely troll upwards of 360. Wouldn't account the same way upon thickness levels when using gun depression, as it would only thicken it to only a small bit, to where it could still be overmatched by premium ammo from any forms of tank destroyers, as they would have deadly amounts of penetration factors in that aspect. So don't expect to be getting a lot of bounces when facing against TDs. But if I were to pull in something like maybe a Tier 8 Heavy, let's say like an IS 8 for example. I mean, it does have fairly solid penetration factors on its premium, but this is what an IS 8 would look at in that aspect. Its standard ammo would not be enough in order to cut through some bits of the turret, but its premium ammo can somewhat do some necessary damage to it, but only if you do manage to hit it in the right spot. Look at the upper plate though. It's not going to be something that you would want to mess with, especially when in a Tier 9 Heavy, as it thickens it now up to 362, as that would make a drastic difference whatsoever. And then in terms of the side of the vehicle, the side of the turret is actually still quite pretty trolled if, like I said, if you do manage to hit it in the wrong spot. Still upwards of 282 for like the rearmost point of the turret right here, as it is kind of a little bit angled downward, and as some tanks would kind of just be angled outward instead of like angled inward kind of in retrospect. But some bits of the turret right here, mainly on the front side, are going to be overmatched quite easily at 132 to 158. And then the full-on side is upwards of 210 to 81. And then finally for the rear, the back of the turret is only 51. And then the full-on rear where the engine deck is located is 60. And there are some parts to where it can be HE'd, especially when running calibrated shells to open it up to a minor bit. So kind of along the lines with how you would gain your DPM with every autoloader or auto reloader, you would basically have to dump the clip. But in an MBTB, because you have a shell reload time of shell 1 being 12.12 seconds, it's pretty much optional if you'd like to dump that shell, or just mainly rely it as a single shot, considerably because you have an 8.24 second reload time on shell 2, which basically means you just have to wait 8 seconds, and you could still be able to out-trade certain vehicles in most aspects as apart from that. Or if you're just kind of generous and just want to fire shell 2, it's completely up to you. You still gain your DPM pretty much one way or the other, but it's more preferably to dump the clip because you're basically able to pull out a much better damage output in that aspect. In terms of the pen, it's not necessarily that bad, but pretty solid in terms of the physical of what it has going for it. having 248 on the standard, 335 on the premium, and 64 on the high explosive. Combined with the average damage, it's not necessarily pretty for a tier 9, but in terms of balance for an autoloader, this is pretty solid, having 390 on the standard, 330 on the premium, and 500 on the high explosive, combined as well with a 3.8 seconds of aiming time, with 0.286 dispersion, and then finally for the maneuverability, you go 38 forward, a fairly solid 18 in reverse, and a fairly solid power to weight of 15.7 along with that. When I first got the MBTB, I absolutely fell in love with this vehicle, especially because of that deadly turret, mainly relying on getting the most of troll bounces in general. This vehicle, I should also say, has first been introduced as a part from World of Tanks console, but it is a tier 10, and it's a single shot that has a 9-second reload time, and it can dump out 400 damage. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it also has, I think, 10 or 11 degrees of gun depression, which is actually quite crazy to even think about. Alright, so here we are loaded on into game number 1. Let's see what we can do. They have a Destiny. You hardly ever see any of those anymore. They have a IS-6 Legend, a Keeler, and a 4502. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. We're going to mosey our way over towards the left. The most important thing is that one of our guys said don't suck, so that's going to be one of the most important factors to contribute towards that purpose. So we're going to head over here then. We got the Barras moving on over towards the side. We're going to kind of mosey on up right over here and see what we can spot. We got an enemy Yad Tiger already spotted off to the side. I'm going to move on up just a little bit, see if the scent is possibly going to make a dire miss poke. Or in that aspect, I could possibly go for this enemy Yad Tiger right here. Let's see what we can do in that regards. Alright, we got the scent, and we also got the Yad Tiger. Let's see who's going to poke on out first. Also got the Barask off to the side. Alright, this is going to be a little bit of a weird scenario. Yad Tiger gets plucked once, and we got a VK-45, it looks like, who we can spot out in the open. I don't want to hit that shot because I'm not necessarily going to risk him going into a side scrape like that. Alright, so we're going to wait once again. Let's see what we can do. We got the Yad Tiger or the scent. Alright, Yad Tiger's coming on out. Alright, I'm going to back up just a bit. We got the Barask off to the side. Looks like we can maybe get a slap into his vehicle. There we go. 410 slap right on into his vehicular. And then we're going to move on up and possibly see if we can get a shot into this Yad Tiger. I'm actually going to wait to reload my first shell in that regard. So I'm going to kind of see if I can bait this guy. Maybe. Unfortunately not. He possibly sees. I'm actually willing to take a hit. I honestly could care less in that way, shape, or form. I don't really know why he didn't fire, but I'm going to go ahead and aim in my second shell. And there is about 700-800 damage deducted out of his vehicle. And that's the positive factors that contribute towards this vehicle. Unfortunately for my team, though, they're not really contributing to the best way, shape, or form. So I'm going to head on upwards over here and see what I can do in retrospect. We got the Barask off to the side right there. We're going to go ahead and wait to reload shell 1. Let's get one slap into you. Reload once again. And unfortunately not able to get a tap into him. Alright, we got the Yad Tiger behind us. Unfortunately not going to be the case. We got the Barask once again. Let's go ahead and see if we can maybe finish him off. Let's go ahead and move on upward. Unfortunately not. So let's go ahead and aim in on the Yad Tiger for a nice little tap into his vehicular. And we're going to go ahead and, to not risk it, we're going to go ahead and finish him off. And then we're just going to go ahead and we got the IS-6 off to the side. We got the Barask coming in on our rear. Alright, he bounces us. So 3, 2, 1. Oh, he fires his second shell, unfortunately enough. But I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or another, as our team pretty much sucked the big dink on this one. Alright. So we got the Destiny off to the side. Let's go ahead and see if we can maybe get a slap into his vehicle real quick for 342. The Barask is going to move on back, which is unfortunate. So we're going to go ahead and aim in another tap into the Destiny right there for a nice slap of 300. And we're already past 2,900 damage, but we're going to go ahead and die in the process, as it wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference whatsoever, as this team was pretty much a problematic result. But 2940 damage for an autoloader for our first battle, that is necessarily a fairly solid result, and we did necessarily do our job in retrospect. And our team pretty much fell apart at the last second, and 2 people only surpassed 1,000 damage. That's actually kind of sad, and we were able to do top on the team and outdoing everybody in that aspect. Alright, so let's go ahead and plop into game number 2 then. That was a VK crate. I already have the tank, so I don't know why it would advertise that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the MBTB is a very terrible vehicle. It's possibly considerably one of the most balanced autoloaders in that regards, and really when it wants to work when it wants to is really where this vehicle can feel nice in that regard. So we're going to kind of hop on into game number 2 then. Unfortunately, with the amount of luck that I've been receiving, I've been getting more and more losing teams. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. That's just how, apparently, Wargaming loves to screw me. So, let's see what we can do as apart from game number 2 then. And we are just loading on in, which is beautiful. Let's see, they got a Comp Panzer, a Moishin, AMX 5100, and a 16801P. Alright, so we're going to head over to the right then. 2, 1, and let us move. Yes, we are going to be going over to the right. See what's going to poke. Alright, so moseying on forward. Want to be a little bit cautious when trying to poke through this area because this is a fairly popular spot where vehicles like to kind of poke themselves all through these little gaps right here. So we're going to kind of stay put right here and see what's going to poke. Alright, we got the Comp Panzer already spotted. Could have penned him in that aspect, but that's alright. We got the Yad Tiger as well. Let's get a nice low roll of 252 into his vehicle. Alright, the Yad Tiger fires, so let's go ahead and see. Unfortunately, not able to get a tap into him just yet. So it's going to give us time to reload our first shell. Alright, we got the Yad Tiger once again. Let's get another slap for 358. Honestly, good care of that Comp Panzer pecks me off. We got the T-30 off to the side. Actually quite crazy that we bounced aside, so we're going to go ahead and back on up then, as we're going to kind of rely on this T-30 to come on out. Looks like some of the other vehicles are going to be coming on out in that aspect as well, like the Comp Panzer 70, so we're going to kind of wait for him right here. E75 kind of recommended to back on up, but that's unfortunate. So we got the T-30 coming in hot once again, 347 slap into his vehicle. That guy made a dire mistake as he didn't realize that my E75 had help off in the back. We got the M4A2 Rump Panzer right there. We're able to get a nice slap into his vehicle right there. Alright, so it looks like some of the enemies are going to be pushing on upward just a little bit. So we got the AMX already spotted out in the open. There we go. 448 slap into his vehicle. The gun does feel nice in certain aspects when it wants to work. And you will get those high rolls in the 400s in certain aspects along with that. Got an enemy Moishin off to the side. I want to see if I can probably bait a shell off of him. Or he's possibly just going to come and set us fully. And unfortunately, upon his behalf, he does bounce the shell. Alright, so reloading again. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to kind of get up into his cheek right there. And then we're going to go ahead and slap him for 345. Alright, and then we're going to move on upwards over here and help out our Eric Concept out, as the Comp Panzer and the Yad Tiger are the remaining 2 enemies left. Possibly will have enough time to get 2 slaps into this guy, as I will have my full shell or clip reloaded in that aspect. So we're going to mosey on up towards him, use our solid bits of gun depression. Let's get a tap into his turret, and reloading again. There's another slap for 463, and there's a fairly solid result right there, using the double shot capabilities to your advantage. And in this one, we were able to break past 3,000 damage. Again, guys, this gun does feel sincerely nice, especially when RNG's on your side, rolling above your average damage output of 390. 3363 in this one, only able to block 400 from 1 shell that was taken on my vehicle. And that is going to be another instant top on the team in that. And then we are going to plop into game number 3 then. That was actually sincerely fast. Let's see what they got. It's a tier 10 battle, unfortunately. An E5, they got a 57 heavy, 7201, and a 114. Alright, so let's see what we can do apart from this one. We are possibly going to head on over towards maybe the hillside if anybody's actually willing to go that way. Like this enemy, or our ally 57 heavy. So that's possibly what I'm going to do in that aspect. Unless if our 60 is possibly going to be the only one that's going to go over here, I think it's possibly best if I go ahead and help out my 60. Because I do have pretty solid bits of turret armor, but tier 10s can butter through it like absolutely nothing. So I do want to be a little bit cautious in that aspect. 57 heavy's going to poke all the way out, and I do get a nice tap into his vehicle. Lickety split before he ends up moving on forward. And the beauty part is that we have 18 km/h reverse, so we can get out of that danger zone without a hassle. 57 heavy's going to poke on out once again. That's unfortunate that that shell managed to bounce. But the good news is that we had our first shell reloaded once again, and that way I can go ahead and unfortunately bounce the 57 a second time. Well, that's kind of crazy, even though he had the side of his turret fully on exposed, so he's possibly going to mosey on up a little bit forward, surpassing over towards the 60 TP. He also got the VK off to the side as well. I would really like to see if I can get a slap into his vehicle if he does make another dire mispoke in that aspect, which is possibly going to be the case. Oh, come on, 57. I know you want to, bro. It's all just a matter of waiting. I don't want to get plucked by a VK, though, which is unfortunate. I really would want to wait for the VK, maybe to poke on upwards as well. Okay, so he did get spotted at the slightest bit, so we're going to kind of wait for him to make a dire mispoke. I really hope that's going to be the case. Otherwise, if the 57 Heavy wants to lurk past that spot right over there. Alright, so you know what? We're actually going to mosey on up over here. Let's see if this guy... Oh, never mind. The VK turns around. We get one slap into his vehicle. We're going to mosey on up and get a second slap into his vehicle, outdoing him for 700 damage evenly and 2 shots. Alright, now we got the Sheridan coming on out over to the side right there. Alright, at least I could possibly get one more slap into this enemy 57 Heavy right before my 60 gets cleared. But unfortunately, knowing my luck, I missed the shot. Alright, so we're going to back up then. I really hope that these guys are possibly going to lurk on out. Our Rheinmetall's over here too, and that's kind of crazy that that guy got that shell out. So we got the VK right off to the side right there. Heat shell moment right there, and unfortunately, I am getting absolutely kerblunkered. Alright. Reloading again. Let's go ahead and see what else is going to lurk on out. We got the Sheridan right off to the side right there. We got the 57 Heavy. Let's see if we can go ahead and make up for the missed shot as apart from that. He's going to be moseying on up. There we go. 428 slap. Alright, so we're going to back on up just a little bit then, and we're just going to go ahead and wait for these guys to fully on-expose themselves. And apart from my team's behalf, they are suffering big time once again. So we're just going to go ahead and reload our second clip once again. We got some guys lurking up at the top. Alright, who's going to poke? Who's going to be the unfortunate one to poke us? Alright, I could possibly go over here and possibly hold these guys off because the only bit of support that I have is the grill. And I want to kind of prevent some vehicles that are going to push on down towards us while at it. Well, the base cap is sincerely going up just a minor bit. We got this 114 off to the side right over here. Let's go ahead and see if we can get a slap into you for 407. And the E50 is going to come on out as well, so I'm going to back on up a little bit. It's a good thing I got a pot shot into his vehicle, as it looks like that my team did clear that enemy Yad Tiger. And the 114 seems to want to come for me, unfortunately enough. That might be the case apart from his behalf. I don't know why our grill is just fully on sending that. We got the enemy E5 right off to the side right there. Unfortunately, I miss. But we're going to go ahead and make up for that by getting another slap into his vehicle. And unfortunately, I am going to die in every way, shape, or form, which is unfortunate. But what more can I ask for? I mean, not necessarily anything I can do in retrospect, but that's still a fairly result of 2,300 damage. Still, guys, this gun is fairly balanced, and you will do fairly solid in terms of, like, individual results from what you display for this vehicle. So, yeah, you will lose a lot of games, but you still will put a pretty solid result as apart from what this vehicle has going for it. 23 is not bad. I mean, just because my luck deteriorated me at the last second knowing that it was a loss, came to the unfortunate of outcomes. And I still did top on the team, outdoing my team in every way, shape, or form. So like I said, don't go wasting your life savings on this game, guys. I mean, this is a fairly solid vehicle, but still, if you want to try to test your luck and see if you can get this vehicle for possibly less than 30 crates, then congratulations, you possibly have the best of luck as apart from what I have to experience. In terms of the individual stats of the vehicle, it's actually fairly solid and it will do you well in most aspects. So hopefully you guys did end up enjoying today's video, and if you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and make sure to turn on those bell notifications while you're at it so you do not miss out on any new videos or streams. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, y'all.